Establishing and maintaining boundaries takes a great deal of work. In moving toward recovery or growth, you are certain to encounter some resistance. This resistance may come from either external or internal sources. Both types can be difficult to deal with, and you will need support from others. Join Dr. Cloud as he helps you prepare for the resistance you will experience as you begin to live a life with boundaries.
Hey guys, welcome to session 7 on boundaries. This is called Resistance to Boundaries. Okay, here's the deal. If it were easy, you probably would have done it by now, right? Boundaries are sometimes pretty tough things. In fact, if you just think about this developmentally, when do we see boundaries emerge in life? They emerge basically kind of full-blown in about the second year. You see a baby's life is pretty cool. They get to be held and they get to drink milk and everything's kind of cool. And then they grow and they get stronger. And then what happens? They run out there and become a toddler and they bump into the limit and they bump into the coffee table and all this. And they hear for the first time, they hear the word no. And what do? When you say no to a toddler, you've seen toddlers. What do? They just rise up and call you blessed. They go, oh, Mom, thank you. Thank you for setting limits with me. Thank you for caring about my well-being. Thank you for disciplining me. I'm so grateful for time out. Is that what they do? No, that's not what they do. In fact, they resist so strongly that somebody came up with a term for it, the terrible twos. Come on. Let's declare, amnesty for all the toddlers in the world. They're not terrible. I think it should be called the terrific twos once we understand it. That what they're doing is they're running into a limit. For the first time, they're having to negotiate that, and there's a protest in it. But if we hold the limit, then that protest will go away, and they'll learn to be cool with it. Well, that's pretty normal in toddlerhood. Now, here's the problem. You got a bunch of people running out there in 30-year-old bodies, or 40-year-old bodies, or 50-year-old bodies, or 80-year-old bodies. And you think, because they got the adult uniform on, you think there's an adult living inside when actually there's a toddler living inside that nobody's ever said no to, nobody's ever stood up to, nobody's ever really had a good boundary with. And so when you do, you hit the terrible twos in a 40-year-old body. And that's resistance. That's the first kind of resistance which we'll examine. At the screams of a toddler, or as Proverbs says, the screams of a mocker or the fool that doesn't like to run into any kind of truth or any kind of limit. And that's the external resistance, okay? Or there's another kind of resistance, and that's sometimes that because of external resistance, we're afraid to set the limit, and there's an internal conflict that keeps us from actually setting the limit that we need to set. Okay, so that's a little bit about where we are headed. All right, internal resistance and external resistance. Let's look at the external resistance first. All right, so what does it look like? External resistance. What does it mean, external? It means outside. So here you are, you take a boundaries course, you go somewhere and you say, you know what, I've been thinking about this and there's something I want to talk to you about and I'm not going to, do this anymore, or I'm not going to enable this behavior anymore, or I'm not going to keep doing this, or whatever it is. And so you set a limit. Well, instead of rising up and calling you blessed and thanking you for it, what does the other person do who doesn't really like it? And where is the resistance first of all lie? Well, it does lie most of the times in other people. And it comes in various forms. The first one is that you can expect with some people that they will give you a guilt message. And what they're going to probably try to do is in some way judge your freedom or judge your truth or your righteousness. I mean, just take judging your truth as an example. You know what Proverbs says is that when you confront the righteous person, it says that they thank you for it. But it says if you confront a mocker, in fact, it tells you, don't even do that, because if you confront a mocker, that they will cast insults upon you. They will shoot the messenger. And sometimes the kind of limits and boundaries we need with mockers or fools is we actually need consequences, because talking to them as a boundary doesn't help very much, because they will try to make you the problem. And they'll say, well, if you did this, or I thought you cared, or all those kind of guilt messages. And that's the first kind of external resistance that you'll see. Another one is anger. Anger. Or really, these are kind of the same, but they're different flavors. See, the guilt person will act like they're morally superior and say, well, gosh, I thought you were a Christian, but obviously not, if you won't do what I want you to do, right? Or I thought you cared, or I thought you were concerned about my well-being, or this, that, and the other. All these kind of manipulative things. The angry ones will actually get, powerful and aggressive. In fact, remember what I talked about earlier in Leviticus, where it says don't pervert justice? It says don't be partial to the needy. In other words, don't not have boundaries with people that are needy. We still have to hold someone that's needy responsible for doing the right thing, as well as trying to help them. And then it also says don't be partial to the needy, but also it says or defer to the great and powerful. See, a lot of times people will get angry at you, but here's what the Bible says about this resistance. Great verse. Go learn this one. Proverbs 19:19. It says that when somebody gets angry at you, it gives you a basic formula. It says, do not rescue an angry person lest you have to do it again tomorrow. I think that's the New American Standard rendering of that. Look it up in your Bible. It'll say something very similar. Basically, don't give in to a temper tantrum is the way to translate that verse. If you do, you're looking at 40 years of it. Okay? Now, go back to the toddler. See, when a toddler throws a temper tantrum, if the boundary can be held, ultimately that temper tantrum gives into really being bummed out, and then they adapt, and then they've got that structure in their head now. But if every time a toddler has a temper tantrum, if the parent goes, oh, well, here, it'll be, and they give into it, what if you just taught that toddler, oh, I know how to get what I want, I'll just have a temper tantrum. And anger is an external resistance that actually can break people's boundaries down if you let them, and you have to hold strong and not rescue the angry person, Proverbs 19:19. Here's another one. They may give you consequences and counter moves. Oh, well, if you just do that, if you do that, well, the heck with you, I won't be your friend anymore. Or I'm not going to hang out with you. Or you do that, I'll do this. Well, sometimes that's true. Sometimes people threaten that. And other times people actually do it. I've seen situations where when you confront somebody and tell them the truth about something, you never hear from them again. I have seen that happen. And this is a very, very scary thing. But ultimately, I was talking to somebody not too long ago about an employment situation, and they were saying that they were kind of being abused by their boss, and the boss wasn't respecting any kind of schedules or any kind of time that they needed, even on weekends with their family or anything. They said, I can't have boundaries or I think he will fire me. I said, well, you know what? That really could happen. Ultimately, we have to be responsible for making sure that we can deal with the consequences of standing up to something. Because what I said to him is ultimately as a person, you've got to decide, what are you going to do here? What's most important to you? And if you're telling me that this job has you held captive to where you're a slave and you have no choices, then I think it's really important that you go really work on whatever it is, the resume, finding other opportunities, go take care of yourself so that you don't have to be a slave. And sometimes that means in a relationship, if somebody's going to be really mean and abandon you or whatever, that means you have to take responsibility, go find a support system and people that do care about you. But ultimately, the bottom line is, if somebody has consequences that they're holding over our heads, then they've got us captive. And you can't live like that forever. So most of the time, this is a threat, and you stand up to it and they cave because they need you a lot more than you need them. But sometimes it happens, and you got to be prepared for that. Okay? Consequences. The next one, physical. There are situations where somebody stands up to somebody and the other person actually can be physically abusive or even worse. And this is why it's very, very important for some of you. The last thing you want to do is go confront somebody. The first thing you want to do is go to a shelter. Or the first thing you want to do sometimes is go hide and call the police. There are situations like that. There are some people that you should protect yourself from, because physical resistance is a reality in some situations, and you have to be careful, okay? So, physical resistance. And the next resistance is the pain of others. Now, sometimes this is that they are screaming, right? They're crying foul and it hurts. And on and on and on. But sometimes, you know what? It is real pain. That we say no, and it is, it's hurtful to somebody. Like sometimes you're an employer, and for the boundaries and the stewardship of the business or whatever, and somebody's not performing and you fire them, or if you're a single person and you're in a relationship and you know that ultimately this isn't the right one, you break up with them, it's painful. And looking at that pain and seeing that pain sometimes is so hard for people that they won't set the boundary. I have seen a lot of times in dating, the dating world, I've written a couple of books about that. John and I wrote Boundaries in Dating. I wrote a book called How to Get a Date Worth Keeping. And one of the most important things about dating is that before you get serious, or if you are serious with someone, before you take it to the next step, that you make sure, right, that this is somebody you really want to give your heart to, that they're worthy of your trust and their character and all of that. Or even if they're a good person, that it's the person you want to be with. And sometimes I have seen people drag these relationships out way longer than they should, or drag it out with an employee way longer than they should, just because they are afraid that the breakup or the firing is going to be painful. And it is going to be painful, but that's just a part of life. And that is the ending of one thing that opens the open door for the person for the next thing. And it's a necessary ending sometimes. But we treat that as a resistance that sometimes keeps us from doing what is the right thing. Okay, so the pain of others. How about this one? Blamers. If you're going to have good boundaries, get you some blame Teflon. So when people blame you for all their misery, if that goes into a place inside that gets you, then you're going to be held captive. When they start blaming you, if you learn to just empathize with that and say, gosh, I'm really sorry if this is frustrating to you, but you can blame me for your drug problem, but it's really not me. You're the one that's choosing this. And most of the times, what happens with out-of-control people is they blame you in some way. Well, I can't believe you're doing this to me. I'm not doing this to you. Your drug use is doing this to you. You're the one in control of your behavior, okay? And so you just continue to clarify the boundaries of where the problem actually lies. I am not doing this to you. You're not showing up for work 46,000 days in a row is what is doing this to you. Maybe it would help you to look at that and stop blaming me for you not owning an alarm clock or whatever the issue is. But some people are afraid of blame, so they can't have boundaries. And then the next one, there are real needs out there. Real needs. You know what? there are some people that really have needs. And you have limited resources. You have limited time. You have limited energy. And here is the basic codependent dilemma. You must understand and confess something very big. You ready to confess a very big sin? And this is going to sound funny or weird, but here's your big sin. You got to confess that you are not God. Because the wish to be God was original sin, where we wanted to be like God, right? And what comes with God? Omnis, omnipotent, all-powerful. We have the power to help and cure everybody. Omniscient. We know how to fix every problem that somebody has. Omnipresent. We feel like we can be everywhere, helping whoever, wherever we, You have potent, not omnipotent, not omnipower, but you are potent, you have potency, you have power. It's limited. There's only so much you can do for some people, and there's only so many people that you can help, and you don't have the power to help all of them. And so some of them you got to say no to. And that is a heartbreaker. I mean, there are orphanages, they're helping kids, and they have to turn some of them away that are real needs because they're at their limit. There are hospitals that are at their limit. There are families that are at their limit. They're already helping, but there's a limit. And sometimes you have to say no to real needs because you're not omni. And that's why God has given you a role, but you're not the whole body of the church or the whole body of people, that you have a part, but you can't help everybody. You got to figure out where your limits are, what you're able to do. I cited earlier the story of Moses when he was trying to help everybody. And his father-in-law came to him and said, Moses, what you're doing is not good. You will surely wear yourself out, he said, trying to hear all these cases and solve all these disputes of all these people. And what he said to Moses was, look, here's what you do. You purpose to hear the most difficult cases and delegate the rest of these needs, these real needs. Let other people take care of those, and you reserve yourself for this because you're doing too much, okay? So you have to have the ability sometimes to let some real needs go because you're overextended and you just don't have any more to give, okay? Real needs. And then the next one is forgiveness of outside people. Sometimes this thing with somebody on the outside, maybe a family of origin person or an ex or whatever, that this external person is becoming a problem and you're resisting having boundaries because you're locked in this war with them and you're blaming each other and you're resentful or you're in a conflict, or you're still wanting approval from them and you're trying to get something that you didn't get before. And that's the resistance. And the key to that is forgiveness. To realize I'm never going to get it. They don't love me. They don't care. And forgive them and let it go. To forgive means to cancel a debt. They don't owe you anymore and you're not wanting it anymore and you give it up and you grieve it. And when you do, then you're free. And that freedom creates a boundary. They no longer have control of your life because of what they did to you sometime in the past. Unbelievable freedom from forgiveness. Okay, now let's flip it. These are the external problems we run into. No short list, right? And now there is the other side of the equation. I have met the enemy, and he is me. That I've got some stuff inside of my own head that becomes a resistance. Remember the verse I gave you earlier where it was 2 Corinthians 9:7, where it says, give as you've purposed in your heart, not begrudgingly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. So we give as we purpose or choose to. Begrudging is when we're giving in to external pressure and we give in and then we begrudge what we've said yes to, but the pressure was from the outside. That's the external list. Under compulsion means there's some sort of should or a have to internally that I don't have a choice of. And we're going to go through that list here for a few minutes. I'm going to grab my water, which is, you can't see that table, but there's a table over there that has good things. There. Now I get my voice back. Okay. Internal resistances. What do they look like? Number one resistance, my need. Why do I put up with this? Sometimes we put up with things because a bad relationship is better than no relationship. And if I'm in a state of need, right, and I need somebody's approval or I need their love and I've never gotten validation as a person or connection, that vacuum that I'm walking around with can cause me to put up with a lot of stuff. So what we have to do is we have to turn to other people and to God, our support system, to meet those basic needs of security. Those are good needs. And that's why codependent groups, if somebody can't say no to somebody because they need their approval so much, they go join a boundaries group and they get support in some sort of group like that. Then they're strong enough to go stand up to the person that they need so much. The next one, unresolved grief and loss. Sometimes we're walking around with a lot of grief inside, and when we say no and have a limit with someone, excuse me, I have really got a voice struggle going here. We say no to, somebody or whatever, and the temporary grief or loss of that, it taps into a deeper grief. I have a friend who is single, and she has been to 2 or 3 really bad boyfriends in a row, and I've watched this, and each time when she'll try to do the breakup, she'll drop into a black hole so deep that she thinks it's all about the guy. Now, I've seen this with 2 or 3 guys. It ain't about the guy. It's that loss, standing up, having that conflict, that loss taps into a deeper grief that comes from her family of origin, great abandonments that she had in her life and hurt and pain and abuse that is tapping into. So sometimes you have to get some healing in order to have boundaries. So you got to seek healing here. Then another one. Here we go. Internal fears of anger. Let me ask you a question. How do you feel when someone's angry at you? There are some people, somebody's angry at them and they look at them and go, dude, what's your problem? Because they have good boundaries and they don't let that anger permeate. I know other people who've been abused by a lot of anger in the formation of their personhood, and they don't have any skin, really, and other people's anger gets in like darts and it shoots to their heart. So if you got fears of anger because of angry voices that are still in your head of how you've been treated in the past, then that comes for a healing as well, and you got to develop some thicker skin. So go talk out that hurt and that pain and get in a healing group and go see a counselor. Begin to talk about all that sort of stuff, and what's going to emerge is if you were treated harshly, then you've got hurt, and you're going to get in touch with your own anger at how you were treated and push against it. And when you begin to get angry about how you were gotten angry at when beaten up or abused, then that is part of the developing skin, and that helps develop, some boundaries because you're in touch with your own protest, and that's not right. And now you're not taking it in anymore. The next one is fear of the unknown. Sometimes we need to set a limit, but we're afraid to set a limit because we don't, what if they don't like me anymore? Or what if I'm being abused at this job and I'm going to resign? Well, what does tomorrow hold for me? Well, here's the best way to deal with the fear of the unknown. There's a handful of things, and it starts with having a relationship with God. Because whenever you're at the place of you don't know your future, which we all are all the time, but we just don't think we are, I might not know my future or what my future holds, but I know the one who holds my future. I can tell you, I've been at points in my life where hitting bottom and depressed and all sorts of difficulties. And I had to take the next step. And I didn't know what the next step was. I didn't know how to get out of a mess or get undepressed or whatever that was. But somebody had introduced me to Jesus, and I found out that he was alive and that he would take my hand and he would lead me. And sometimes when you set some limits and some boundaries, it's like when Abraham left Ur, not knowing where he was going, but he knew that he was headed to a city whose architect was God. And when the Israelites were called out of their bondage, and they had to say no to some things, and they had to leave, they didn't know where they were headed, but Joshua and Caleb believed that that promised land that God said he had for them, that if they kept following him, that they would get there. And sometimes it is unknown. We don't know what the next step is. We got to do what's right, and it might mean a separation, or it might mean a breakup, or it might mean an unresolved conflict, and we wonder, what's going to happen tomorrow? We got to have faith that God is going to be there with us. And then secondly, that's why the Israelites didn't travel alone. You know, Joshua had Caleb with him, right? And you go in the tribe and you join the group, and there's security in the group that'll help you through this. So it's very important to do those things. And then what's another great thing about the unknown? You ready for this? You know what the Bible says about your future when you have a hope is not only do we hope in God, but where you have character and you're developing skills and abilities and finding wisdom, then it says the future is an upright highway for you instead of a patch of thorns. Once you learn that you can learn, you really get less afraid of the future. You know, when a kid goes off to college, if they've learned that they can make friends, then they're not afraid of leaving their friends. If they've learned that they can learn new things, that they're not afraid of what the unknown classes are going to demand from them. And on and on and on and on. If you learn that you can learn, then you're willing to go into the unknown because you've developed a basic skill of figuring it out. Learning that you can learn, developing skills. And the more you up your skills in relationships and life and functioning, the fear of the unknown lessens. So, very important part of this. Okay, what's another one? We mentioned forgiveness on the other side. Internally, it's the same thing. On the inside, it's our own unforgiveness. So we need to let go of them. But we need to look for, where have I not let go of this person and they still have control of me because I'm still, you know, kind of holding a grudge. Whatever we hold a grudge for, somebody's going to have control of us. And so we've got to be able to forgive. And then the next one is an external focus. I've never met a codependent that did not think that the reason their life was miserable was because of the alcoholic. See, they thought if that person would stop drinking, if that person would behave, if that person would be nice, then I would feel okay. And there's an external focus, and they think their happiness, the power to their happiness lies outside of themselves. Then they go into recovery and they realize, you know what, this person could be a wacko, and I can develop my own fulfilling life. I can be a happy person. I can have friends. I can have a support group. I can be fulfilled. I can pursue my talents. I can be loved by the people in my community. And, you know, I'm kind of bummed at this problem over there, but I'm not destroyed. And so if we think that happiness lies in the external, it never does. All the happiness research that they've ever done says that circumstances have very little to do with our happiness. That happiness comes from basically how healthy we are on the inside. So you've got the external focus, and I've talked about the guilt, you know, that other people can do, but we got to realize if somebody's putting guilt messages onto me, the real problem, the tapes are in my head. See, if you don't have the guilt in your own head and the guilty tapes in your own head, when somebody says, well, I guess you really don't care, do you? And they put that guilt message on you. If there's no, you know, Velcro takes two pieces. Somebody tries to take the Velcro and stick it on your head. If you don't have that sticky part that it can stick to, it doesn't stick. It just falls off. So if you can resolve the guilt inside, then they can't make it stick to you and it won't have that power. Similar to needs, sometimes there are, the next one, abandonment fears. That we've had so much abandonment that we're afraid if I stand up to this person and they leave, or their separateness or whatever, we can't deal with it. Again, we have to go for the healing there. And then I'll leave you with this. Same thing I started with. If this were easy, you would have done it by now, right? Why do so many people have destroyed lives because of a lack of boundaries? Well, A, because the boundaries never were built into them and given to them, usually by their families of origin, sometimes by the church. But the second reason is because to get out of that, we have to take responsibility and we got some work to do. See, all of these steps involve work. God bless you for being involved in this video series. I mean, watching these clips and listening and thinking, what do I need to do? And getting with your support system. And I'm going to tell you, freedom, because ultimately boundaries are about freedom. And I have never seen any kind of freedom that did not come at a cost. Okay? Bondage is free. Freedom will cost us. You're doing the cost now of hard work. God bless you for doing that. It's not going to be easy, but let me encourage you. All discipline for the moment seems not to be joyful, but sorrowful. But in the end, it says it leads to peaceful fruit of righteousness. So go for it. You can do this, okay? It's going to take a little work. You got to get in your support group. You're going to work at it. You're going to work at it. You're going to fail. You're going to go, oh, no, I was going to go confront them, and I gave in. You run back to your support group, and they pat you on the back, go, oh, that's okay. Go try it again. And finally, you get it. And you come back and say, I did it! And they clap. But I feel terrible. Well, then they help you feel better. And so then you go do it again. The next time you come back and say, I did it. They go, how do you feel? You go, I feel great. Yes. See, it was a step-by-step progression. That's how growth happens. Stay connected, and you can do it. Okay, a couple of questions. Number one, where are the external resistances that you're running into, and what are your strategies to deal with those? Number two, what are the internal resistances that you can identify with, and your strategies to deal with those? And number three, what will be the support system that you're going to use to stand in the gap and get commitments from some people to stand in the gap as you go work from this? And who will those people be? Okay? That's it for this session. Tune in for the next one, and we'll see you then. Bye-bye.
For more Solutions recordings or other personal and spiritual growth products by Dr. Henry Cloud and Dr. John Townsend, visit our website at cloudtownsend.com or call 800-676-HOPE.